Hello, everyone. It's everyone's least favorite council member, Vaughn, doing the second official Talk Show 2.0 revamped edition. And we're coming at you live with the finals preview of season 6. The student athletes demonstrating brilliant organizational and inspirational success will be taking on drum roll, the infamous Yeehaw 5, aka IRL Sluts, minus me, plus Blake. I mean, plus Zed, because Blake was already an IRL Slut. Without further ado, lads, we're about to get it popping. Candy, I just saw you in the chat, realized I forgot to include a slide about fantasy. Fuck. It's already scuffed. Sorry. Alright, so, lads, it's been a good season. It's been a season of ups and downs. It's been a season of decay. It's been a season of new teams, old teams, old teams sucking, and one new team being really, really good. I'm talking about Buceters, of course. The rest of the teams did okay, I guess. And yeah, we're about to wrap up season 6, so look for some exciting changes for season 7, namely in the sense that we'll be working with the new rank system on how to adjust points. We're talking about lowering point cuts for higher elo players, so the people that have sort of almost graduated from Prophecy Cup might have a returning spot. And if the rumors are to be believed, we're looking at at least 5 times the increase of the prize pool for next season, if not more. So let's start with what we're all here for. We're all here to chat about what's about to happen, right, lads? It's the fucking It's the fucking matchup. We all knew it was coming, even though I predicted Baby Shark to be here and they let me down quarters. It's the second seed. It's our boys Yeehaw 5 versus the student athletes demonstrating brilliant organizational, inspirational success. So these, as far as I know, are going to be the rosters for tomorrow. On the side of the number 1 seed, the never to win seed, according to the P Cup lore, got my boy Omni Vantas the top lane. We got my personal pick for the MVP, Thor in the jungle. We got point player, role player god, lost in rotation, Xander in the mid lane. Got my boy Devastation, who's working at Jimmy John's right now. Shout out to Jev. He's got an 8-hour stream. Shift, not a stream. Oh lord. And then just me. I'm playing sport, by the way. Side of Yeehaw 5. I'm sure we're all familiar, but we'll run it through. We got Kyoshi, got Season 5 MVP Knight of the Zed coming in hot in the jungle. Hide on Blake, the lowest point mid laner in the league. Got my boy Secretic, the original smoking gun. Honestly, wanted to have Pinto for like double smoking guns, but we're proving that we don't need him. So yeah. And then my boy Nahor, the man who brought me into this league, is faced off against me for our sequential titles, our back to backs, because we're both looking for those back to back titles. So we've got a little bit of comparison here. So these team stats and all the stats that are following have been taken from the most recent games. We took series from playoffs because a lot of times the players that were on these teams or had swapped to these teams didn't always play during the seasons. Like a lot of times there's a lot of roster swaps for EF5 earlier. We didn't always play the same players on s.a.d.b.o.i.s. So this is the most recent series put together. So here, that's a quick rundown of the stats of each individual team and how they've been doing. So, over the course of the stream, we're going to talk about each of the individual positions, both players that are going to be playing in those positions. We're going to try to figure out who has the edge, what sort of picks they might choose, what sort of priority the teams might place on certain strategies or champs, and we'll try to figure out after this who's got the edge where and who might come out on top. So, these are just fun graphics that we'll be putting on the stream also during the actual semifinals. I mean, excuse me, grand finals, which are tomorrow, by the way, same time, Tennessee. Please be there, or else it'll be sad. And let's talk a little about how playoffs went. So s.a.d.b.o.i.s and semis to get here, they played Vortex, number 6 seed after they upset Baby Shark, which nobody saw coming, reverse sweep. So the series against Vortex was a slaughter. Not to mince words, but all games ended in 30 minutes or below. Gold leads of 5K, sometimes more at 20 minutes. It just seemed like all across the board, s.a.d.b.o.i.s was clicking. And the reason why is because Lost in Rotation was unleashed Galio God, by the way, but it turns out he can literally play any other champ. So we saw him play Zoe for the first time that season, this entire season actually. He went 19 kill performance with Dark Harvest Zoe, and it just seems like Sad Boys can win through multiple avenues because of how effective like Chandler Seathor is at enabling the rest of his team. Like his ganks and presence and counter jungling and pressure on the lanes enables everyone to succeed. But it looks like when Lost in Rotation is popping off, the team is unstoppable. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's too many weapons when Lost in Rotation is on point. And the semifinal series was probably one of the best series I've ever seen him play. He had really stellar performances on Galio, really stellar performances on Zoe. And if he's able to play like he did, in semis, I can't imagine Yeehaw 5 being able to stand up to that. But interestingly enough, the biggest decider of Yeehaw 5 series, which people thought was going to be kind of close, was actually Blake. Blake played super well against Bad Boys, and he was up against the pretty much undisputed or arguably the best, if not mid laner, best mechanical player in Up, which is Jared. Charlie Smells, Jay Radius, the mid laner for Bad Boys, the pretty much sole carry of the team, and he did really well. They showed that when Blake's able to get a signature pick Ari, and you'll see this later in the stats, the man is actually to be respected and feared. Even though he's like plat 5 points, this man on Ari is looking real clean. There were some really, really nice outplays that we saw when he locked in the nine-tailed mistress. And otherwise, he had really good performance on LeBlanc as well. It's funny because his club tag is LeBlanc, and it's the first time he ever picked it forever. So they hard smash Bad Boys. Like that, it was brutal to watch. So I don't think anyone can dispute that. Even though Yeehaw 5 is a good team and Blake is a good player, Blake is the weakest link on that team. So if Blake can perform like he did in semis and go even and like forbid get ahead of a mid laner that is seen as superior to him, that gives Yeehaw 5 a lot of hope because then they don't have to worry about that pressure being drawn mid. They don't have to worry about that mid tower being broken open. They don't have to worry about the enemy mid laner being fed or the enemy jungle mid taking advantage of that disparity in skill or disparity in experience. So I thought that Blake's performance was a really good shout out in that series against Bad Boys in the semifinals. So now both teams are coming into the finals and looking pretty strong. Like they played one series and it was a quick 3-0 on both sides, and the teams haven't met for a long time in the regular season, where Sad Boys won 2-1. And that series was interesting because I'm pretty sure it was Omnia's first series as well. And Nahor wasn't on their team yet. It was Sharkbait at the time, MVP Seong, or whatever his IGN is. So the teams look slightly different. So it'll be interesting to see going forward what'll happen. So next, what I want to do is we're going to go through all the lanes and talk about the mix-ups between the champs. So what I have is I'm going to bring in our P-Cup specialists to talk about each of the lanes with me so we can discuss what we think. So joining me today is going to be the Leftover Lads top laner Roxas and Sentinels and Vortex top laner Sub Karaoke Machine to discuss with me about how this top lane is going to go. So welcome, welcome, guys. Thanks for agreeing to hop on the show with me. Roxas, how you doing?
Doing great.
All right, my boy Karaoke. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well as well.
All right, I'm glad to hear it. So I know both of you have played against, or at least watched the games that these guys are in. Just from an eyeball test from the series you've had, and maybe if you've played against these players, what are some of the things that you feel like either of these players bring to their team and has them in the spot in the finals? Like, what does Omni and Vanitas add to Sad Boys, and what does Kiyoshi add to Yeehaw 5 that makes them a legitimate player in the eyes of their opponent?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So both these players, they're both like big brain tank players. Although Kyoshi has shown to play like Victor and the Swain, which I think is very interesting. I think it like makes him shine out more than Omnius to me because he's able to play like the Victor and the Swain as opposed to only playing like Scion. Like I think Omni has like 10 games of Scion.
Yeah,
It's
nine and
pretty
one on the
wild.
champ, which is pretty nuts. But he hasn't been proven on a lot of stuff, is what I'm hearing from you. Like the play style hasn't been very varied, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just think like Kyoshi has a bigger threat in the top lane. He can play carries, he can play tanks. He's more versatile, in my opinion. Just
That's
looking
fair. That's
straight at
fair.
that.
And we have seen a couple times too when he walks in that Swain. It's really interesting because then they send the brothers down bot lane, and then we've seen Secretic go top with an ADC. We even saw Vayne last series, which seems a little for fun to me, but it obviously worked out. So they know something we don't. Um, Roxas, is someone who's played against both these players in the regular split. When you matched up against them, how did you feel like they played in the laning phase explicitly? Like you were pretty regarded as a pretty mechanically gifted top laner, and you held your own a lot of the times, even if your team struggled with roster swaps. So how do you feel about these individual players if you remember your series against them?
So in the series versus Kiyoshi, the first game he was Aatrox, I was Fiora. It was a bit of a struggle in lane because Aatrox has the advantage, in my opinion, early on. But eventually, I just outscale him, and it was kind of he could just never side lane against me. So that's how that went. And in the game two, he was Lissandra and I was Camille. All I admit was a bit back and forth, but then he made a good TP play and got some assists, and I didn't really get the lane against him, so you know how that goes.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely do. I definitely do. Okay, that was interesting here. So I don't play top lane. I just roam top lane. I don't give a shit what goes on up in that lane. Boring lane to me. But top lane actually has a pretty nice spot in the meta where I feel like it has a viable amount of potential to carry, similar to other roles, even though jungle's broken, I know. But the point is, we're talking about top lane. Since Worlds, we've seen sort of a meta form around a mix of bruisers, and even though tanks can be played, it's really priority Scion. Like Ornn doesn't really see as much play as he used to, and you can't really count Tank Victor as a tank per se, even though he's built to be tanky. So, what are some of the picks that, as two players who've played in the league and also follow fives, what are some of just the top picks right now that you feel in the top lane that should be prioritized in the series for these two players? If you want to start
Um,
Roxas, yeah.
all right. So in this series, I feel like top picks are going to be like Scion, Urgot, or Victor. It's definitely those three.
And any what do you think will be prioritized most by Kyoshi? Because I mean, obviously looking at the stats, my boy Omnia's Scion duty or die. So
Yeah,
if they leave up Scion, what do you think Kyoshi picks into that? What's the play top lane when they lock in the Scion and you think, oh, Resident Sleeper, health stack? What do you lock in on the other side?
I think Victor, because Victor is just kind of busted right now, especially with Shield Bass as well.
Karaoke, what do you think about that? Do you agree, or do you have a different opinion you want to throw in there as well?
Um, well, I don't. I think if you pick the Victor, you can get really hard camped. I think most teams don't really try to camp it, but if you have a really good jungler like Chandler, then you can easily like camp the Victor, put him down, and then get really fed off of that. So I'd be a little more sketchy about picking the Victor here, but I think maybe Urgot would probably be the to go after Sion. Maybe
That's
Ornn if
that's
they
fair.
feel like they want another tank.
That's fair. And I think from watching the games of these two players, it seems like Kiyoshi has a more direct impact on the game than a lot of other top laners. It seems like he seems to group a lot more in Omnia. I mean, you can tell by the kill participation as well. Um, but it seems like Omnia will sit in a side lane in the s.a.d.b.o.i.s games while Kiyoshi starts to group for fights more. And those are two different just styles of player. But I agree with you in the sense that picking Victor would be good because Victor can still add that team fight presence with the Chaos Storm and all of his like augmented slows, especially with you still build Iceborne, right, guys? Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
Yes,
pretty sure.
always.
Okay, yeah. So that build is just the worst, and I'm pretty sure like there's nothing Sign can do to really out push Victor in that scenario. So that's definitely a pick that we'll have to watch out for. Um, any other tidbits on top that like we should be watching for when we view this series? What do you think? What do you who we heard that pretty much Kyoshi seems to have the advantage. Anything that we should be looking out for in the matchup, or anything you could expect from these players that we might not know about, or any thoughts on just how the games are going to go between the laners?
I feel like Omni might greed a bit as he does in the games that I've seen, and
Whoa.
that might be his downfall.
Whoa. You come at my boy Omnia? All right, all right. Top
I
lane's over.
am.
Top lane's
Don't at
over.
me.
Top lane's over. You're gone. All right, karaoke. Anything else? He had to leave. I'm sorry. I can't stand that. I try to stay
I think
unbiased, but you can't come at Omnia like that.
yeah, yeah.
You watch your mouth. All right. What's up?
I think if it's straight 1v1, I think Kyoshi, depending on the pick, like if he has the Victor, he can easily probably win that. But if it's not 1v1, like if it's ganks come around, then it's like the jungler just starts snowballing, and we'll see how the game goes, right?
Yeah. All right. Thanks for coming on, guys. I'm gonna move on to the next position because I don't want this to take like 9 million years, like
Yes,
sometimes they used to
please.
do. Yeah. We're trying to be brisk. So thanks, Roxas. Thanks, Karaoke. I
Yeah,
appreciate you
absolutely.
guys coming in. Appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
All right. So we heard it here. The opinion, the general consensus of my compatriots was that Kyoshi seems to have the advantage. I won't comment. Omnia Gigasmurf on Scion. I think if Yeehaw 5 are little bitches, they'll ban it away because they're scared of it. But we'll just have to see. We're gonna move on to jungle now. With two of the potentially best players in P Cup, and I tried to only have players that were not directly involved in rosters. But for this one, I gotta bring in the boy who's played with both of these players the absolute most of anyone else. P Cup's very own #1 mid laner, DTS Mid, is gonna join me today on the desk. What's up, DTS?
What's up, man?
Hey, nice. I like to hear that. So, I mean,
Ugh.
jungle, right? Broken role, as we both know. So, and mid,
Best role in the
yeah,
game.
mid is jungle difference, as is
Yes.
top. So,
As usual, yep.
as a mid laner whose lane is decided by junglers, what jungler do you think has the advantage in this series? Because I mean, last season, Knight of Zed was by far and away the best jungler, but now that Chandler's come into the picture, that seems to be in question. So, what are you thinking about this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've had a lot of experience with both the junglers. I played with Chandler a million different times. I have the most experience with him of probably any jungler I've ever played with. And then Zed, obviously, was my jungler all the way through P-Cup last season where we finished not winning. Uh, but, I mean, they're both, obviously, I think they're like the best junglers in the league. I don't think you can ever argue that now. Like, I feel like maybe at the start of the season it was kind of close. Like, oh, maybe some other people can break into the top two, but now it's just like set. Like it's Chandler and it's Zed that are the two best junglers in the league, and they play similar in terms of like they just played the meta and like the strong skirmish, like farm and get gold and carry the game kind of junglers. Although I think Knight of the Zed probably plays a little bit more to like the farming to get himself strong. Uh, Chandler's a really big enabler for his laners, which is not super different for Zed, but it's just a little bit more in favor of Chandler because he plays a little bit more early game stuff like the Lee Sin, Camille,
Yeah,
whatnot.
definitely agree on that. And we saw in the last series, because granted, the stats from the last series for the playoff series were slightly skewed because of sometimes how short the games were. I know there wasn't like an FF and stuff, but we definitely
Hmm.
saw that in semis, especially because Chandler made huge early game impacts. Like he would gank lanes level 2, level 3, all throughout the time. Where you're right, it feels like Knight of Zed keeps his foot off the pedal in the first couple of minutes. Not saying he doesn't have that jungle proximity, but he definitely gets clear and he gets map control and he wants to understand and track where the jungler is, and then starts to make plays once he gets that advantage. So I think that when this jungle matchup happens, he's going to struggle to get that advantage he can so easily get on those other junglers in the league, and I think that will make not necessarily him uncomfortable, but Yeehaw 5 as a team uncomfortable because they're so used to him just having that presence and being there for their team that when they're going to have an equal, if not greater threat, that sort of neutralization of that jungle pressure could spell some uncomfortable matchups, especially in the player difference in some of the roles, namely mid lane, I think is a pretty obvious one. So it'll be
Yeah,
interesting to see how that comes across. So other than Chandler's Kha'Zix, which he seems to love to pick in every series,
yeah.
two of these players, both of them have one of the not even real jungler, not even real champ anymore in their top three played Talia. Granted, it's a support now, so hell
I
yeah,
mean that
but
champ's doomed
it's
in jungle. I
it's
think
just
I don't think it's
dog.
like super bad. It just doesn't feel like you should pick it over like Xin Zhao or like for Chandler because I think like I mean for this series I'm looking at Zed to pick like he's been favoring Aatrox a lot recently. Which is obviously just a super strong champion in general. And then when you put in the jungle with Aftershock, it's strong. Kane, he's been spamming a shit ton of solo queue with a lot of success. And it's kind of like assassin-esque, which is what he used to play when he was a mid laner. So he's transitioned like super well into that style of a jungler. And then he plays obviously the Graves. He played a ton last season, plays a ton this season. He wins like every Graves game pretty much.
Yep.
Um,
Have to agree. I know we banned it when we went up against them in
yeah.
regular season. So
And in comparison with like Chandler's champ pool for this series, which is probably going to be, like the Kha'Zix, the Zenzao, Camille, like Lee Sin, like one jungler having like just like the constant early game pressure priority, which is just Chandler's champ pool, and then there's Zed with like the scaling into like the team fights and the skirmishes. So I think it's kind of actually on Chandler to like really take over early game, which he's done obviously super consistently. But if Zed does get like that farm advantage, or he can like get out through that mid game with his lanes not too far behind, he might be able to just take over skirmishes on like the Aatrox or the Graves or the Kane and just start killing people left and right.
Yeah, I definitely think that's accurate, and this is definitely, I think, the closest positional skill difference between the teams in any role. So it's exactly as you said, the slightly different approach to the early game will really just dictate how the series goes as a whole, because the jungle is so impactful early. So I think that's going to wrap that one up. If you had to give the edge to one of the junglers, who would it be?
I mean, it's a little biased, but I do think Chandler, just because I think he lines up a little bit more with the meta. Like, junglers right now are mostly just enabling their laners to get leads, and then like being able to like help their laners snowball that lead into like turret plating or even like a finished turret before 14 minutes, which is super huge if you get like Herald or something. So I'd say a little bit in favor of Chandler, but I think it's super close, like you said.
All right, yeah, I agree. Well, thanks for coming on. We're gonna move to the jungle, but appreciate you giving your input. I mean, to the mid lane. We're gonna move to the position you
Oh,
actually
right,
play. Now
right.
you're dismissed. You little jungle autofill. All right, thanks for coming
Oh.
on. All right, we're gonna move now into the mid lane, and the two peak up players that'll be joining us to discuss the mid lane is going to be Sentinel's Pickaxe and Baby Shark's Hamlet, two mid laners who both unfortunately ended their playoff journey in quarterfinals, but are joining me here today to talk about the mid lane matchup between Yeehaw 5's Hide on Blake and s.a.d.b.o.i.s Lost in Rotation. So if I wasn't stupid and kept server muting them, they would have been able to talk. What's up, guys?
Yo.
All right. Yeah. So, I mean, just eyeballing the stats, seriously, my boy Lost in Rotation is Giga Smurf, but I don't want to try to bias the conversation already. So going into the conversation about who does what, right? First, we got to talk about the picks that go down. What do you think are going to be? Obviously, we know what is going to be prioritized. What do you think the teams are going to ban away from the other players, and how is that going to affect how champ select's going to go? Because mid lane is such like a counter matchup heavy position, and even though Hamlet never got to pick a counter matchup on Baby Shark, I'm sure he understands the importance of it. So, how do you guys think that the teams will draft around their mid laners, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of the other team?
So I think other roles are probably more highly prioritized with bans. Probably jungle, maybe top lane. I think s.a.d.b.o.i.s definitely need to ban the Ahri though. Blake's two losses on Ahri this season are actually to s.a.d.b.o.i.s, so I could see them leaving it up, testing the waters. But I think Blake looks like he looks so much better on Ahri than he does on other champions generally. That
Agree.
I think you don't really want to risk it. Like even when he does bad on Ahri, he's usually still relevant.
Agree.
And I
I
think that was
definitely agree.
I think that was the story against s.a.d.b.o.i.s. Like he hard carried his first game as Ahri, and then game 3 he kind of struggled early, but he still ended up being relevant.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to switch it over then. Pickaxe on the side of s.a.d.b.o.i.s, right? Do you think, granted, you understand the players that are going to be playing? We mentioned maybe banning away this. Do you think there's going to be any mid lane bans going according to Lost in Rotation, or do you feel like that he can just pull out enough things that they won't bother? Will they ban the Galio? Will they focus the jungle pool? Maybe leave his stuff up? What do you think the champs that are going to be available to Lost in Rotation might be? Like, what could he play with in the mid lane?
I think with the jungle matchup being so close, they either want to pick away or ban Galio, because that just kind of lets the jungler of s.a.d.b.o.i.s kind of be a little bit more aggressive with having Galio being able to jump from mid. So he's able to keep priority or just be there mid and then ult to help his jungler. I think that should definitely be a priority pick taken away from s.a.d.b.o.i.s.
You hear that? You hear that, Sander? You hear that? Galio. You heard it here. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
I mean, his Galio looks Mega Man mode. Like, I hate playing that champ, and anyone on Sentinels can attest to that. That's probably, like, one of the champs I hate playing the most, other than, like, Lissandra. But at least with Lissandra, you don't really lose lane. Galio, he's a little bit more fragile. Maybe I'm just trash at him, which is probably the more realistic option or answer. But, yeah, I don't know. I think they really have to figure out something about the Galio. Maybe from the sounds of your your mic closeness, he
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be ecstatic about the Galio, but it's better than Scion mid. I'll give him that. He doesn't have to play that, so he can just play Galio and help his jungler win the game. So
All right,
my input.
that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so I'm gonna say with the advent of some of the new preseason changes, we see a lot of stuff like Dark Harvest being picked up. We see a lot of rune changes. We see a lot of different play styles that are coming out. Do you think there's something that we haven't seen in the mid lane yet in Peak Up that is so good that you can't believe it hasn't been picked, or you think there's some strategy or champion that could be placed in the mid lane that either you haven't seen the players play or you hope you could see them play that could really swing the finals in their favor? Are there any just interesting picks or suggestions from you guys playing the meta that you found could
Yeah.
work?
I don't know how the junglers are specifically, but if I was on the team where Nocturne is a contested pick for both teams, I'm not really too sure why Nocturne mid with Smite isn't like super thought of because it does have AoE. His auto attacks do have like a cleave, and you could flex it jungle or mid. And it was already kind of like a mid pick before. You kind of lose some of that 1v1 prowess with the ignite, but having Smite and taking Nocturne away from a team that really wants it, decent pick.
Agree,
And
agree. And what
I
were you
know
gonna say, Hamlet?
I know it's like resident sleeper, but I'm actually surprised neither teams have picked up like played Lissandra much. I mean, I feel like that'd be a really good pick for Blake, assuming Ari's off the table, and
True.
I mean, it's a safe lane. It wins most matchups. It's very good in team fights. And I feel like, on the other hand, I feel like with Lost in Rotation, say Galio's taken off the table. It's a champ that can roam. It's a champ that can create plays. It's great at setting your team up, which seems to be the S.a.d.b.o.i.s playstyle. And I think like it can really set up Chandler. So I think that pick really should come out.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if either mid laner plays it, but I think that's kind of something that they should be doing.
On that note too, Lissandra into Ari, they could leave Ari open and use that for a different ban and just pick Lissandra because you have to like actually be like away from your keyboard to die as Lissandra. So you can just pick Lissandra into Ari. Ari tries to make a play, doesn't have cleanse or QSS or whatever, she's just dead.
I think that the biggest thing for EH5 though is Blake doesn't need to win lane. He needs to be able to protect his side lanes in his jungle though from Lost in Rotation. So I think EH5 is 100% fine giving over something like Lissandra and like picking Ari into it. You can have Blake take cleanse and like it'll be like, as long as Blake can keep the shove and can follow roams. I think EH5 are completely willing to like draft into maybe not a losing lane, but a lane that's they're 100% willing to make mid lane kind of a snooze fest. Just pushing around.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you had something to add there, Seth?
Yeah. Well, it's realistic that Ari is gone, so I feel like Lissandra's probably more of a priority pick for Blake if Ari is gone, just so he can survive lane and have presence later.
Gotcha. All right, so as we go to wrap it up, if you had to pick one of the players here that you would give the advantage to or expect to outperform the other, based on the conversation, Hamlet, which one would you say and why? To quickly reiterate, 15 seconds.
Definitely straight 1v1. I have to give it to Lost in Rotation. I think a big thing is junglers in this scenario. I think Blake doesn't really respect like early gankers, the Xin, the Camille, the Lee Sin, and Chandler's played a lot of that. And I think that Lost in Rotation and Chandler together can probably either hard shut down Blake or just shove him in and win the map.
Yes, and I agree because when I mentioned earlier at the very start of this stream, the reason why the teams did so well in Smash was because of the mid laners. So really, if one of these mid laners just does so much better than the other one, it swings the game wide open. It swings the game just completely wide open because mid is such an influential role, and there's so many different supportive play styles that both the teams can offer. Like Blake with the more usually gets drafted more carry oriented champs that are his comfort, and then Lost in Rotation can bust out an assassin or a carry or a support. There's just so much variety and variability that it's just impossible to tell what could be picked. But I do agree. I think Lissandra could be something that EH5 is eyeing, and I do agree that I think Lost in Rotation probably has the edge here in the one-on-one. But I think that's going to be all. Thanks for coming on, guys. Thanks for talking with me about the middle lane. Freudian slip there. I missed the roll. It's pretty fun.
I'll cock with you anytime,
Yeah,
Vaughn.
thanks, Hamlet. I appreciate that. I'll cock with you when your jungler doesn't invade red buff. So anyway,
So never.
yeah. I'll catch you later. I love you, Overrate. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm gonna catch you later. I'm gonna move on to the bottom lane, and so the gamers that I'm gonna be bringing in for the bottom lane to talk about, I'll be talking about ADC and support. And the two people that have been so willing to join me is the tallest man in Pickup himself, Afro the Giant, and then also Sentinels ADC Collinator, freshly out of unretirement to quickly go back into retirement again. How's it going, you two? Hello? We there?
We're doing great.
All right. So, Afro, how about you, pal? I have you at 0% for some reason. Let's try that again. Hello? Afro, pal.
Hello.
There we go. There's that voice. That
Stop
real
scuffing.
voice. Yeah, scuffed. A little scuffed production here. All right, so we've got Devastation, not Pinto, in the bottom lane versus Socratic. And since I figured, we all play bot lane here, we can both talk about ADCs because Afro, let's be real, ADC players are just little brainlets that right click what we tell them to. And Colin, you understand that support is just the real carry of the lane. So I feel like we both just know enough information about the other roles that we can all have the discussion about this conversation. So we have a lot of variety. And I've been saying that word a lot, but that's all the preseason is with picks that can work in the bottom lane. And I'm not just talking about marksman as well. So we don't really see this in these players, but if you guys had to give me your tier list of sorts, what would you say are priority picks? Doesn't matter what your champ pool is. Like, bar none, if you have a player that can play any marksman, or let's not say marksman, let's say any bottom laner, your carry bottom laner, what would be some of the absolute priority picks that you guys would point out in the meta right now? Let's start with you, Afro.
Well, Karthus is just disgusting, and anytime Karthus is meta, you know that there's just something terribly wrong with this game. And then after that, if you're a dirty Lucian player, he's like really good. And then I don't know, Caitlyn, I guess. Botland's dumb.
All right, that's fair.
Oh,
That's fair.
Jin's also good.
Yes, I notice a trend with Dark Harvest being taken by the champs you're mentioning. Afro? Huh, weird.
Strange.
Interesting. How about you, Colin? What are some of the priority picks? Not necessarily like. Actually, I would say a lot of your favorite champs are in the meta right now, but maybe you can offer a different opinion as the ADC player in this chat.
So some like super sweaty picks like the Caitlyn with the grasps, and then like I'm a fan of Heimerdinger. Well,
Heimerdinger is probably busted.
It's
Yeah,
really good
he's
right
very
now.
good, definitely.
Yeah.
And then Ziggs is also good. You ignore the last turret plating with your W, so you could just smack that after you like 5-man bot lane, and then get a turret for free, get dragon. And then also you have Dark Harvest Draven, Karthus. Whenever Karthus is good, it's good. It literally can be played any role this time. Yeah, Dark Harvest, by the way. And then you have Jin with Dark Harvest and Draven with Dark Harvest. Because Draven, like, Conqueror was, like, alright on him, but, like, he's really finding something with Dark Harvest now, so he's coming back because he's always struggled with his Keystone. So now I feel like he's coming back.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And I would also throw in that Lucian is a pretty strong pick as well. I feel like the champ has the tools to succeed and doesn't necessarily raw out damage some of those Dark Harvest fed users, and definitely not someone like Karthus, but the champ does put out significant work, and the bruiser build that's become the standard for him because rip crit ADs. I really think that champ as well has seen some priority. I mean, we drafted ourselves and prioritized it in our semifinals, so I think Lucian deserves recognition as well as probably being one of the best, debatably alongside Draven, pure marksman ADCs left in the meta. So I like that a lot. And you did mention the tower plating, and I think part of the reason why there's so many different mages being played is because you need that shove. The meta has just shifted now because a first tower now gets you 1,400 gold, which is insane. And with the 2v2 bottom lane, you split that among your carries and you start rotating to those early dragons. Dragons spawn faster, they're more effective. There were buffs on all the elemental drakes but infernal like increases, so all of them are actually feel useful. It just seems like such a meta that even though bot lane isn't the strongest role in the game per se, it's so bot lane focused. Like everyone just wants to put behind the enemy marksman so they can take advantage of all the things they can actually get in the bottom lane. The gold there, the resources there, the stats there are just so valuable to teams that I see a lot of emphasis being put on bot lane, even though, buff ADC. If I learned anything from the TCS stream, that's what I know. So granted, we actually are talking between two players now. Let's move on to who's actually here. Socratic and Devastation. And, a lot of the sort of script if you say, of the season this year was that with the advent of the decay meme and Pinto being the ADC that Sad Boys went for a lot of times, it seemed like because of that player, Sad Boys was just winning so much because of the unfairness of the points that the player was awarded. That was sort of the general feeling among players. And Socratic is the original of that actually from the last season. Colin, you weren't here for this, but Afro, you may or may not remember the absolute
No,
anarchy. Okay, yeah, you had left. Yeah,
I
Socratic is
played
the
one game.
Socratic was the original Pinto, and honestly, probably worse. Like, there's some real controversy when he got subbed back in for IRL sluts. Like, really, really bad. Let's say like people left the server over it, and like videos got made, smoking guns. So, and now Devastation is back. So, how do you think this substitution changes the makeup of Sad Boys? Do you think it'll have much of an impact? What do you think Devastation being over Pinto, does that give Sad Boys any advantages? Does that put them in a worse spot? Where do you think that the change in ADC comes into play in the finals here? And either of you feel free, but let's start with Colin.
Yeah, I think Pinto is just a pure upgrade over Devastation. No offense to him, but they're both good. But I think Pinto just is better, especially with your mage picks. You could just kind of take over the bot lane, just win through that, get their tower plating. So yeah, I think Pinto's definitely better, like a step up. And with Devastation, and it's more like your playstyle changes to roaming mid and letting him just survive the 1v2, I think.
Okay, that's fair. Interesting. How about you, Afro? Any thoughts on if Devastation really being in the game, inhibits Sad Boys in any way, or is it just, a fine ADC that's going to be played? Like, how does him being in the game, does it change it at all? And if it does, what do you think the impact will be if it's somewhat significant or not?
Alright, so we've been talking a lot about Sad Boys. We talk about a lot of these roles that don't matter. So we're gonna talk about like the support. And when you have Devastation in, it lets you just like go to the other way. So you can take your jungler, put him in your backpack, your top laner, put him in your backpack. So you guys can win through you. It makes everything like you just, if there's 1v1 top lane, 2v1. I think you don't need to have Devastation be the better AD carry. You need him to be the better team AD carry. And I also think he's just better than Socratic.
Yeah, and I actually think what you just said. Wow, wait. Let me touch on that in a second. That was hot take. Though I will say I think that that point you just made where Dev needs to be a better team player actually gets communicated so hard in the stats because look at his KDA and kills. He plays super safe, right? 7.1 KDA is actually nuts. Like the man is not dying. The man is converting onto the kills. Even though he's not outputting the same raw damage as other ADCs, it's because he doesn't get as much as that gold funneled onto him because the team plays around different carries. It allows like loss and rotation to flourish in the middle lane because there's less of an emphasis or focus on Sad Boys in the games that Devastation in, where it's like we're not going to have to put all our resources in bottom lane. Devastation is a player who can work with what we give him and make it work. He's honestly, it feels like he's almost the Hjarnan of the team. If anyone's familiar with the G2 climb at Worlds, like if you look at the stats that it's either 1 or 6, right? We're looking at the same thing. So all the DPM stats arguably low, but everything else is insane. Like doing an average of 10,000 damage to turrets is nuts. The man took 11 towers in a single series on his own. Like I know there's a meme that all marksmen are good at is taking objectives, but if you have a marksman that's always dead, it makes your life really hard. And he played his team fights consistently well because I was in the game watching him doing. He had some nutty like Lucian dashes in. My heart kind of stopped. So I think that Devastation in is actually, speaking from my own opinion, a completely fine champ. I mean, pick. I think Devastation is solid in lane. I think he's actually criminally underrated because everyone's been so focused on the Pinto narrative. I think the man actually smurfs for his role. Nobody ever really talks about how much of value he is, but he's such a low point ADC. I'm going to gas him up a little bit here. But let's swap to
So
Socratic. Let's swap to Socratic, though, because Afro, you said that you thought Dev was better than Socratic, which is the hottest take of 2018. I need to hear more about that.
okay. Question: Socratic is I'm ADC, right?
Correct.
That's his. Okay. Um. So I joined this league essentially this year. So I don't know all about the lore and dreaded last seasons, and I don't really care about it. I kind of just see what I see.
Sure.
And what I saw until it's hard for me to talk shit because we got beat by Vortex in reverse sweep. So,
yeah, sure.
but from what I saw is I saw Socratic have an entire team play around him. Granted, this was when they had Sharkbait. Play an entire team around him, and they just didn't perform as well. Like, and then if you swap over to Devastation, where he's like sneaky, where he's just, I'm here and I'm doing very good, but I'm not the shining star. They're not playing around me. It's just he does more like they each fill a job, and Devastation fills his job better than Socratic does.
Interesting. And I see what you mean about how the whole team plays around him. It feels like in the victories that Yeehaw 5 have, even if it's players like Kyoshi or Zed, also doing well, if Socratic isn't at a comfortable lead out of lane phase, the team as a whole struggles to succeed because they depend on him to play around him. And I don't think I've ever seen a game necessarily where he's performed poorly per se, or I've never felt like there was a time where he was the reason why the team lost. Granted, the play style of the team is this man needs to get gold and then he needs to smurf past 25 or 30 minutes. So I think the team Yeehaw 5 struggles as an entity with is the fact that if they don't have that ability for Socratic to take over the game with his like insane mechanical play, like the guy is turbo smurf if he ever gets ahead. And the
Yeah,
reason why Yeehaw 5 3-0 is like look at the CS differential at 10. The man was averaged 30 CS up at 10 every single time. So, but I think that is a fairly valid point because what if I understood what you said there was Devastation is flexibility, and the Sad Boys don't have to have him carry. He doesn't have to carry the Sad Boys for the Sad Boys to win. He can take a backseat role, but he can step up if he has to. But for Socratic, it's like he has to perform really well, or EHA 5 loses that identity. Is that somewhat accurate to what you were saying?
yeah, and I mean with top lane being relevant now ever since Victor was found and Urgot is a fun and balanced champion. You can have Kyoshi carry from the top lane, and mid lane is mid lane, but a lot of it is based around how Socratic does.
Gotcha. Colin, did you have any thoughts about the conversation we just had about Socratic? Do you find that like you're agreeing with that, or did you have something you wanted to say that maybe casts a different light on that?
Yeah, I have like a different opinion. I feel like this series, Socratic's gonna be really important because if you have Devastation, you yourself are looking to go to other lanes and put the whole team in your backpack. But like with Devastation, like he's kind of just sitting there in the bot lane by himself, and Socratic and whoever their support is, I forgot who it is, are gonna look to exploit that and just take over the bot lane in the 2v1 matchup that it will be, which is what I predict. So I think that Devastation on Sivir is gonna be really important to neutralize the lane, and if he doesn't get that, it's gonna have to change your playstyle a little because you need to play more toward Devastation, like you would with Pinto. But like I think you really need to get Sivir or something like a mage that is able to neutralize the lane.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting take. So you guys are gonna stay here. We're actually gonna swap to the support now,
Oh, thank
because
God.
yeah. Now that we're
Oh
away from the
God,
boring
I'm
role,
so
like
tired.
God, Jesus. I mean, Colin,
Ugh.
like sorry you have to hear it, but your role is just so
It's
boring.
actually terrible.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
watched
Yeah.
Riot beat your role for
Yeah.
it last
Yeah.
year.
Okay. So before we start, I will say that Nahor only played one game of semis. He subbed in, I think, game three. They were already up 2-0. It was somewhat of it felt like a formality at that point. So his stats are reflective of one game, the most recent game he's played. So those stats don't necessarily encompass a full series. But all these stats were taken from playoffs because we wanted the most recent picture and the most recent play. But we do have all the stats from the rest of the matchup, so we might touch on those later. But so now we have the support, which is the duo to ADC.
Best role in the game.
Maybe not, but I don't know. It's fun. It's fun in this meta. I'll say that much. So we already started talking about the supports. So Colin, you mentioned how the Sad Boys playstyle might change depending on the ADC that they're playing with. So for both of you, what do you expect pick bans to go like for both of these supports? Because if we look, they play both a pretty good Morgana. Like Nahor is 6-1 on it. It's a good neutralizer to a lot of champions that can make plays or take advantage of mispositioning. And on my side, we've seen lots of mage picks. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other champs that might get chosen for s.a.d.b.o.i.s, but with the Dark Harvest advent and the glorious feeling of doing damage in the support role, what do you think is going to go down in the champ select? What do you think the teams are going to prioritize? We already touched on the Sivir a little bit, but what is the 2v2 bot lane going to look like hypothetically? What are some potential matchups we might see?
I think it's gonna be, especially looking for the Sivir. I think you're gonna be looking for mages because that's like the only thing that could be played support right now. I guess like Pike and Alistar are also champions, but yeah, I think mage is really important for the bot lane, especially like even for Yeehaw with the Zyra pick. I feel like Zyra's pretty slept on right now. She destroys the lane. It's kind of like the second Heimerdinger basically. And then Morgana, I feel like is pretty useless, especially if you're on the side of Yeehaw, because mages kind of destroy Morgana. It's not the greatest pick into mages. And then, yeah, I don't know. I think Socratic being on an ADC like Lucian or Jhin that could win the early laning phase, take advantage of devastation, how you're gonna be roaming to help your other lanes, and he's gonna be kind of alone. Take advantage of him in the matchup.
Geez, I feel like I just got to sit bot now to prove you guys wrong. I just never
Yeah.
roam once. That'll be the real. I'll show you guys. What do you think, Afro? What do you think the team should prioritize in the support role with the meta shifting so much and there's so much change to what can be played there?
The big brain play is you last pick support.
Yes,
The support
yes,
counter,
actually,
support counter pick is insane.
thank you.
I tried telling that's my team.
Thank
for
you.
season,
It's
no one
so
believed me.
legitimate. It's because you win, you have a 2v2 winning. Oh my god. Oh god. Yes. Yes. It's so true. If you can get that 2v2 winning lane, because support determines who has the pressure and priority in the lane. It's the support play. Like the ADCs don't have enough resources yet to really swing the 2v2 extremely heavily unless they're playing something like Draven and they're a god at it. But I think support counterpick. I interrupted you, but I just had a hard agree. So keep going. Keep going. I just got so excited.
Support counter pick matters just so much because like if they play any champion, you can always play Morgana, and then they're gonna have a really fun time. But besides that, I mean, everyone talks about mages and Dark Harvest and how it's broken. They didn't hotfix it for brand passive yet, right?
No.
Yikes. All right. But besides, there's these champions that I think are underlying, and I don't think people are talking about how Leona destroys every mage. Every single one of them. She's worse than an Alistar. She'll just run you over. And same thing with a good Thresh, but I mean, I'm not playing.
Okay, odd flag. God. That's fair.
But if you can get these like slightly different, I don't think you should try to play Zyra Indio. I don't think you should. I mean, you can play Morgana because a 5-year-old can, but I don't think you should try to step up to your mage game. I think he should try to do his own with either let's play hardened, like Leona, Alistar, Thresh, or you can even like go the direct opposite way with Janna.
Yeah, no, I think all the heal
Hard
sluts.
sit on your AD carry and hope for Socratic to win everything.
You know, I see actually. It's never played here, but when I was trying to figure out for a talk show I didn't actually end up making, I wanted to talk about like the preseason and changes, and I think that the early adaptive changes make things like Sona and Janna and Soraka really good. Like I even see Janna's and Sona's taking Dark Harvest. It's really effective. Like with that extra AP in lane, like it just takes a couple of W's from Janna and they're gone. Like the champ is really good. So I agree. I think that if Nehor sticks to his strengths in the bottom lane, it will be more of a contest than if he switches his play style around to adhere to this. But maybe he has a pocket pick that we're not aware of. So we'll just have to see what happens. So as I've asked everyone before, I won't ask individually, but in the 2v2, which is a much more interesting discussion, who do you think what 2v2 has the advantage, or would you expect to outperform the other 2v2? And let's start with you, Colin.
I think Yeehaw's 2v2 wins the bot lane. I mean, no offense to you, but I feel like if you just get a good matchup, the 2v2 matchup, then it'll be pretty easy because I don't think you're actually going to be sitting in the lane. I don't think that's what you do. So I think it's going to be pretty easy for them to exploit devastation if they get their hands on early game aggression like Zyra or Lucian or Jhin.
How about you, Afro? That's fair.
I think in a 2v2, I think it does matter on the matchup per se, but like he was saying, I don't think you should be playing for a 2v2. I don't think you want to. I think they would rather do it because if they can control you, then you're not going to the other lanes and saving your team. But I mean, it's really just down to champions in the 2v2. I don't really give an edge to one thing because I think Socratic is. While I did just say Devastation is better than Socratic, in the 2v2 I think Socratic's better than him, but you're better than Nahor. So it's kind of like carry versus carry, and then you have the other guys just kind of chilling.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, it'll definitely be interesting, and I agree. I think the counter matchup support is undervalued in the sense that it really can dictate how your ADC survives the lane, because if you have the tools to handle the other player, you should be able to have the tools to handle the lane and transition your ADC into a position that they can carry, even if it's not necessarily you're playing a supportive role as the support. So thanks for coming in to talk, lads. Appreciate it. But that was Afro, the 1v9 Thresh player, and that was Colin, the most retired ADC in P-Cup. And yeah, thanks guys. So appreciate it a lot. So that wraps up the position by position analysis. So I think I'll end it with, so we've got a quick video at the end actually made by our very own Hamilton. But for that, I want to remind everyone that game tomorrow, 10 EST, best of 5 for season 6 grand finals. It has 4 of the 5 winners from last season playing in it again. No Ian VV3 this time, but 4 of the 5 members of IRL Sluts, me versus the other 3, and 2-time champions and Nahor, Kiyoshi. We've got Zed, MVP. I'll be going for the first ever back-to-back. I guess whichever team wins, someone will have a back-to-back championship. I'll be looking for my repeat. Chandler Seathor has not lost a single season. Has not lost a single best of series in P-Cup since he joined last season. Yeah, I just saw it in chat. That's funny actually. But yeah, Chandler still has not lost a single match ever. Actually, neither is Dev, now that I think about it. But he's only been here 1 season. So will it be the student athletes demonstrating brilliant organizational inspirational success? I think so, but let me know what you think. Feel free to shoot me a message or bitch at me in general chat like a lot of people already do, saying that I'm wrong. I predict the 3-1 for my team, but we'll see what happens. And so before we sign off, speaking of people bitching at me in chat, as we all know, I have a chokehold on council. And so, if the prophecy is fulfilled, we may or may not see me winning P-Cup for the 2nd season in a row. And someone who's gotten to the bottom of this, Hamlet, has decided to share with us his individual findings and has decided to try to put a face to this madness. So we're gonna take a quick peek at that before we head out.
We have our winners.
This is game. That's 100% game. Holy shit. GBC lost the sluts.
Hear me.
Oh my god, it's disgusting.
You have had the privilege of being saved by the great Titan. You may think this is suffering. No. It is salvation. The universal scales tip toward balance because of your sacrifice.
There'll be no rest, there'll be no love, there'll be no hero in the end who will rise above. And when it ends, gonna cry. The shining light will sink in darkness, victory for hate, incarnate misery and pain for all. When it falls.
Chokehold, lads.
The chokehold. Thanks for tuning in.
Ah, fuck. Wait, hold on. Before I forget, scuffed. Before I forget, I have to thank Xander, Lost in Rotation, for doing a fuck ton of work for this and helping me organize stats. I didn't necessarily use all of them, and I wanted to keep the talk show short, but he compiled playoff stats, hand calculated CS differentials at 10 for the graphics that were used and will be used tomorrow night during the cast. He brought up graphics and stats from our regular season match against Yeehaw 5, he did a lot. And then also thanks to Fug for helping me make the graphics. I didn't have a lot of time this weekend to necessarily make all of them, so he was really helpful because it takes me a long time to do those, and I didn't have the time to do them all on my own. And thanks for everyone that said they were going to come in and help me. It was sort of an experimental process. I wasn't really sure how it was going to work, but I think it went well enough where we got some different opinions, and we got to hear from people who necessarily don't talk on stream. So I appreciate that all the people that were willing to talk and contribute their own thoughts. Thanks for being able to do that on such short notice. With that, I will be signing off now that I've thanked everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And yes, my chokehold is soon to be completed. Just one more series, and I'll have mastered it. I'll have the chokehold complete. So, yes, my evil laugh. Mwahaha. That's going to be all from me. Tune in tomorrow, as I'm the villain of P-Cup, and also Thanos. Now. Thanks, Hamlet.